or maybe I'm not sure who's going to be running the PowerPoint, but if you wanted to, Carla, great. If you wanted to get that queued up, then here's John. Then we'll be ready to go. So, all right. Well, welcome everyone. And it's certainly good to see you all. Excited to start our second year of the Technical Advisory Committee. I think we were able to make some good progress in the first year. We had identified lots of things that were still sort of just getting started or were underway, and so we're able to extend the TAC for an additional year. So I'm excited about that. I hope you all are. We have some new members this year who will be doing some introductions here in a few minutes. But let's go through kind of our logistical stuff. You want to move to the next slide, Carla? So as a reminder to many of you and many of our guests as well, the TAC is a virtual forum. So we always we meet online, no in-person meetings, but a virtual forum to generate recommendations, provide feedback to OHA on making improvements to Oregon's NEMT system. And again, as a reminder, TAC members will need to be flexible. The content is really guided by you all. And so it's sort of a dynamic, hopefully, approach that we're taking with sort of some planning and some priorities that we identified together, but recognizing that, you know, sometimes we move quicker than we might anticipate. Sometimes we move a little slower. Both of those things are okay. And so where we think we might be, you know, 6 months from now, we might not be, and that's okay. We look to you, we look to the OHA NEMT project team members, and to the discussions that we have in these meetings. TAC members also need to be open, honest, and humble, recognizing that we have a lot of different viewpoints that are put forward in the TAC. That's really that's to all of our benefit, and it's really by design in terms of how the TAC was built, trying to assure sort of broad and good representation from the different interest groups that are out there in making improvements to the NEMT system in Oregon. And it includes OHP members who are using NEMT services. It includes transportation providers, brokerages, CCO folks, those types of people who work primarily in the NEMT system. And it includes people who are working sort of in adjacent systems who help, like medical offices, for example, county offices, et cetera, who help members in making those transportation appointments, et cetera. And so lots of expertise in the room, and lots of opportunities for us to learn from one another. And then finally here, it's really important to be engaged. And I would encourage you all to be active during and between our sessions. It really provides the best opportunity to contribute and improve NEMT services, and really want to hear, because those voices are all important, want to make sure that we hear from all of you. I try to sort of sort of encourage and watch for folks to make sure that we have some good balance in our conversations. I would invite all of you to do the same. If you feel like there's folks who we haven't heard from and I haven't called for on them, that you are welcome to do that as well. Ask questions in the chat, etc. So with that, I think that we'll be able to have our most productive conversations possible. So go ahead and go to the next slide. A couple of things on Microsoft Teams and logistics with this sort of electronic format. If we can, it's really helpful for folks to use their webcams. I recognize that not everyone's able to do that, and not everyone's able to do that the whole time. of our meetings, but to the greatest extent possible, really want TAC members to be able to see one another so that we can kind of feel as much like a community, even in this virtual setting, as possible. With the microphones, we can get some crosstalk. So when you're not speaking, if you will mute your microphone, that'll make sure that we're all able to hear each other when someone is speaking. We have enough people in this virtual room that it's hard to sort of see everyone at the same time. So if you can use the raise hand function to share information or ask a question, that's really helpful. You can also use the chat to put questions there, comments, etc. So if you're having technical issues, you can send a message to Carla, and hopefully she'll be able to troubleshoot sort of on the fly here. And then again, just really make sure that you're participating, collaborating, and engaging. For members of the public, we have a number of folks who join on today and on a regular basis to sort of hear what's going on with you all in your discussions. Always welcome. We're really glad to have you all. But I would ask that you leave your cameras and microphones turned off for the duration of the session, so that the TAC members are the ones who are showing up in the Teams meeting. And then the TAC webpage is up there, that we post all of the materials there, meeting recordings, transcripts, action items, those types of things that come out of each of the meetings. So with that, I want to move now to sort of what we've got on tap for today. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at the agenda. I sent that out, I guess, earlier this week, Monday morning. But I wanted to just hit on it to make sure that that's making sense to folks, see if there's any questions or any additions that we need to include here. So our goals for today are to have introductions amongst you all, so that both continuing and new TAC members have an opportunity to get to know each other a little better, sort of where each of you are coming from, et cetera. Want to spend some time talking about topic areas and priorities for the upcoming year. I had one-on-one conversations with most all of you over the past couple of months to sort of hear from you what your priorities are, and I've built some information based on those conversations to sort of help to narrow our conversation and what those priorities might be. So we'll spend some time doing that, and then the last thing is really looking at the CCO quarterly quality reports. And discussing opportunities for improvement. So we'll hear from some folks at OHA on things that, how that's looking, changes that they're considering, and opportunities for you to provide some input into that. So I think we've covered all of the those topic areas as well. So I think we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So before I jump into the agenda here, I want to make sure that that's making sense to everyone. If there are any sort of logistical questions, any additions about to the agenda, any questions about that before we jump in. Everyone good? I'm not seeing anything. All right, super. So what I'd like to do is spend the next 20 to 30 minutes probably really getting to know each other a little bit better, so that everyone has a good sense of the background that each of the TAC members have. Many of you know each other. You've been working with each other for a year now, but we do have 3 new members who aren't necessarily familiar with our existing members. And I do think it's helpful to just as sort of a reminder, even for those who have been working together for the last year. So what I'd like to do is go around our virtual room here and ask you to introduce yourselves with your name, where you work, and your job title, if that's applicable. And then if you're a continuing TAC member, I'd like you to share something that you're proud of from your work during the first year of the TAC. And if you're a new TAC member, share with the group why you wanted to join the TAC. And then for everyone, something that might surprise other tech members to learn about you. It really can be anything that you feel comfortable sharing. It can be, something in your background, an experience you've had, whatever, and just something that maybe is a little unusual or people wouldn't necessarily sort of expect it from you. But again, only what you feel comfortable sharing, of course. So let's go ahead and start with that. So do I have any volunteers from TAC members that would be willing to go first? And I have the list in front of me, so I'm happy to call on folks too if that's more comfortable for people. So Joel, you get looks like you're our lucky first. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks. My name is Joel Sovereign. I work for / represent, I guess you could say, Sovereign Medical Transport. I run business operations. Something that I'm proud of from our first year, I would say the particular group that we had in the first year had a lot of tenacity towards finding real solutions and challenging some of the process development and requirements for new programs that the OHA was kind of spearheading. And so I was really proud of the way that we kind of all came together and collaborated to put real material in front of people who are making decisions that are going to have an impact to NEMT work in our state. So I was super proud of our team for that. Something that might surprise the TAC members. Golly, I don't know. Okay. Oh, here's a good one. I was a part of an international festival choir that traveled abroad for a while.
Nice. All right, great. Thank you, Joel.
Yeah.
George.
Hi, my name is George. I am the chairperson for Valley Lift underneath Tim Fountain. The thing that I'm proud of during our first year was we all came together in the first year and solved many problems, knowing that we had more work to do. We worked together as a team. I like the idea. And I know that it'll work. And something about me, well, I was at one time at Jackson Care Connect, a CCO down here in Southern Oregon. I had taken on as a CAC. I took on a CAC chair, vice chair position, and their board of director, all three jobs at the same time. So I was juggling between the three. I helped the CEO, Jennifer Lynn, get the Jackson Care Connect up off the ground from the very beginning. It was a little tough, but we managed to do it from the very beginning of the CCOs when they first started.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, George.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like John.
Let me get my camera on. Cross your fingers. The bandwidth holds. So John Curtis, let's see, down here in Southern Oregon, I'm a volunteer advocate and I am continuing, and I am proud of the way that Oregon Health Authority really engaged with the work that we're doing, and I'm really thoughtful of that. Something you might not know, I love to teach my caregivers how to cook.
Nice. Great. Thank you, John. Tim.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Tim Fountain. I'm the TransLink brokerage manager here at the Rogue Valley Transportation District. Let's see. something that I'm proud of. I would echo the sentiments that the others had shared. Just the collaboration and working with others from different areas and experiences to just kind of process through some of the things that the TAC was needing to work through and coming up with solutions that I think everybody could agree to. And then something that just surprised TAC members. Easy one, I guess. I've been with the district for about 26, 27 years. I've never thought I'd be here that long. So I'm surprised myself. So maybe it's a surprise for me and not others.
All right, great. Thank you, Tim. All right, so anybody else want to volunteer to go next? I can. Charles, I saw your hand up for a bit. Are you able to go next? And then we'll go to you, Elisa.
Yeah, certainly. Happy to. Name's Charles Hodge. I work for Comtrans of Oregon. We're one of the partners, one of the 4 partners that make up the Ride to Care program in the Tri-County area. I'm happy to work with Joel and the other fine folks up here. I too really appreciate the collaboration of the group last year and the fact that we were able to have real conversations around education, expectations, managing safety, those type of things I think are super critical, and glad to be able to continue this year. I moved from the call center operations manager. Now I'm the regional director for Comtrans. So I'm now overseeing our NEMT operations center, our routine transportation division, and our ambulance division. Let's see, something interesting. I'm excited this next spring. I'm looking forward to going down to Baja and doing some scuba diving with killer whales. So
nice. Thank you, Charles. All right, Elisa.
Hi there. My name is Elisa Gerber, and I go by she, hers. And I'm with the Oregon City DHS office, ODHS office. My role is the community partner engagement. And so in that role, I work a lot with our different community partners and different resources and providing those resources to the clients and staff. And so let's see, the reason why I really wanted to join the TAC is because I have a huge passion for medical transportation. It really, almost every one of our clients use that transportation, and the importance of keeping people as independent as possible is one of our missions. And so just have a huge passion for transportation services, especially in Clackamas County, when we are one of the largest counties in the state, and transportation is such a huge need. So yes, this is very exciting for me. Something to learn about me. My very first job, I worked at almost right out of high school. I worked at Lambert House, which was the first adult daycare in Portland, and that is really where I learned that older adults are, I want to only be surrounded by older adults. Those are my people. And so to learn that at such a young age, and then kind of drift off and then be able to come back as an adult and work for ODHS, Aging and People with Disabilities. I'm just in the role I was always meant to be in. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Elisa, and welcome to the committee. So I think I was good. Oh, there she is. Kathy, I think I saw you and then I didn't, but looks like you're back. Kathy, would you be willing to go next?
Sure. We've got some weather here in the gorge, so the internet went out and it might go out again. So I'll speak fast. So I'm Kathy Fitzpatrick. I'm the Regional Mobility Manager and in the gorge. So we're a bi-state region, 5 counties, rural counties. And I help to coordinate the public transportation providers and provide technical assistance for them, and have really been working and struggling with the NEMT system, both in Washington State and in Oregon. I was very excited when CMS issued the new guidance that they issued last year, and I'm proud of the fact that this TAC kind of started that conversation early on February, March, and we're, I'm hoping to see some results from that for adoption by OHA of the new guidance. Let's see why I wanted to join the TAC. I see my public transportation providers struggle with the NEMT system, and over time have really, and it's just seems to, over the last 10 years, we've really seen a decrease in that relationship that they used to be sort of prime and center in. So hoping that the new guidance will help bring that back and support our rural public transportation providers. Sometimes they're the only one who provides that service, the NEMT service in their county. But then I also work a lot with our Native Americans, our migrant seasonal farm workers, and I see the struggles that they go through to access the NEMT services. Usually not even able to make contact with the brokerage. So I've seen kind of both ends of it on the receiving end. And something that might surprise other TAC members to learn about me, well, you don't really know anything about me, so I'm not sure what would be a surprise. I do love senior dogs. That's kind of my passion. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, let's go next to Leslie.
Sorry, I was having technical issues because, like Kathy, we are having some snow and stuff down here. And so our electricity is not always the best right now. Leslie McIntyre, my she, her, and let's see, in our community health assessment, one of the big needs people identified was transportation. And we live in a fairly rural area. I'm all the way on the other end of the California border. And so getting transportation to rural folks is a real challenge. And I just would like to see not only the advocacy point of view, but the NEMT provider point of view, and try to help people make connections. And I'm a senior dog rescuer myself. But the thing people wouldn't guess is that I am obsessively a baker. I love to bake and to cook also, but primarily bake. So that's it from this end.
All right. Thank you, Leslie, and welcome to the committee. So next up, Ruth.
I realized that there was a need with the transportation through another committee that I was on. And that helped me to better understand, because I've always had my own van. And so I've been able to just get myself where I wanted to go. And then this last year, I've had to use this transportation, and I've been so thankful that it's there, because it's just made it so I can keep functioning. And I think that the thing that's hardest for me to comprehend is how people can function around other disabled people and not grasp what it means to not have transportation. And so it's always been something I haven't been able to really understand, how people could just go on without realizing how important it is for somebody to get somewhere. And
Great.
I
And
don't
then,
know. Go
yeah, go
ahead.
ahead, Ruth, please.
Yeah, well, I just gonna say I didn't know what else you guys wanted to know.
Okay. All right. That's fair. So thank you. And then let's go to Shannon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shannon Brister-August. I'm a program manager with Deschutes County Behavioral Health. So I live in Central Oregon, and Central Oregon is one of the largest regions in Oregon. And Deschutes County, of course, is one of the fastest growing cities, not just in Oregon, but also nationally. So our system of care has identified several barriers, and transportation is one of them, particularly to undersupported young people and people who live in rural locations outside of city limits. So my goal is to represent those individuals and help come up with problem solving that results in reliable and safe transportation so that individuals can access care. Something that you may not know about me or might surprise you, but maybe not, is I am a retired military officer in the Army. So I spent 20 years in the Army, and this is my second gig in life.
Great. Thank you, Shannon, and welcome to the
Absolutely.
committee. So I think that covers everyone that is here so far, all the TAC members. So, but I want to check and make sure I haven't. So Deborah Bell, I don't see Deborah. Carla, am I missing her, or Deborah, if you're here?
Let me take a peek.
Speak up. And then the other person that I'm not seeing yet is Shayla.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So hopefully we'll be able to connect with them, or they're able to get signed on. Just by way of, just a super brief introduction from me about the two members that are missing, just so that especially our new members know sort of who they are. So Shayla Duke is one of our continuing members. She represents OHP member category. And then Deborah, and Shayla is in the sort of the Willamette Valley area. That's the area of the state she lives. And then Deborah works over in Eastern Oregon Head Start program, so is representing sort of that other coordinating category. And so, like I said, hopefully they'll both be able to join today, or we can catch up with them at future meetings. So thank you all for those great introductions, and most importantly for the work that you're doing in this committee for sure, and lots of other things it sounds like you've got going on, and it's helpful and exciting for me to really sort of hear those things again, because I think it really speaks to the breadth and the depth of the expertise that we have in the room, and those different experiences that you all have. and passions. And I think we covered a lot of ground in terms of the NEMT, people who are using NEMT and sort of the folks that we're representing here to be able to make improvements to those services. So thank you all for your service and for being committed to the TAC and making those recommendations. So I thought it would be helpful next to just do really brief introductions of the OHA staff who are here today and who routinely attend the meetings and are working on the NEMT project team. So I think Carla, would you mind a quick introduction and getting us started there? And really just looking, like I said, just sort of name, title, area of expertise at OHA and the role that you're playing on the NEMT project team.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be with you. My name is Carla Pelletier. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an implementation and improvement analyst with Oregon Health Authority. I currently am transitioning roles. So with the first year with the TAC, I provided kind of the support for this meeting and kind of some of the work that goes on in between meetings. And I actually will be handing that off to my colleague Bambi, who I'm happy to pass over to next. I am still working on the NEMT project as a whole, supporting the project management pieces of the entire the whole project, I guess we call it, right? So go ahead, Bambi, you're next.
Well, so let me see here. I got my little introduction here. So my name is Bambi Pappas, and I am an operation coordinator with the Medicaid division for Oregon Health Authority. And I'm joining the, excuse me, the TAC meeting to transition over into Carla Pelletier's role as your admin support for these NEMT TAC meetings. So if you have any questions or need assistance, please feel free to reach out to me. And if I can't answer, which probably won't be in the very beginning, I will be reaching out to Carla to help. But something that might surprise others in the TAC members in this meeting, that I learned that I'm an adrenaline junkie. I don't know if anybody knows about these things, but especially after clearing out my bucket list. I had a bucket list and I cleared it out within 2 years. And I did my cruises and my vacations and my concerts and all those, but my most favorable of that was the tandem jump out of a perfectly good plane at 11,500 feet. Thank goodness I had a great person that knew what he was doing, because I was not going to be able to hold on to those strings and turn or whatever I was supposed to do. But thank goodness I got videos and pictures of that, because nobody would have ever believed that I did it. And that was like 10 years ago. So I still want to do something even crazier. I want to do a race car, or maybe even go up to, I don't know, or you go up and you're like floating. But what do you call that? I don't know what that's called. But anyway, way up there in the sky. But outside of that, I'm here to help. If anybody needs to have questions or anything else, or needs any help, let me know. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Carla, and thank you, Bambi, and welcome. So let's go next to Michelle.
Hi there. Good afternoon, everyone. Michelle Mavison. I use she, her, they pronouns, and really excited to come together with you all, kicking off your second year of the TAC. I was very closely involved in the first year from OHA. I work within Medicaid transportation programs, both on ground emergency, air ambulance, as well as non-emergency. And so I've been really excited and got a lot of great information out of the first year, just to listen and learn with you all and take your recommendations and things and put them into action with policy. So very excited to continue my learning and my engagement with you all. And both to continuing members and new members, I'm really excited. And just to share something about me, I've been born and raised in Oregon all my life, but admittedly, I had never gone foraging before for mushrooms. And I just this last season went for my first time foraging for chanterelles and found quite a few, which was very exciting. And it kind of brought together my love of being outdoors and nature and curiosity. Yeah, I was excited to kind of finally go out and make sure I pick the right ones. I've always been intimidated by that, but it was a really fun experience, and I would encourage anyone that might be interested and hasn't done it to give it a try sometime. So, thank you all.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Let's go to Andrea.
Hi, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrea Smith, and I use she, her pronouns. I am on the part of the, I'm sorry, wow, my brain. I am a CCO, Quality Assurance and Compliance Specialist, say that 5 times fast, on the CCO Quality of Care and Compliance team. And a big part of my expertise on that team is it's in the name, is around quality assurance and compliance of CCO in a variety of different programs. And I have been helping out on the NEMT project team to bring that compliance perspective and to help with work around performance monitoring and developing metrics and just really looking at the network, the NEMT network. And I will also share that prior to joining OHA 2.5 years ago, I worked in Albany at the Area Agency on Aging with long-term care services. So very familiar with connecting members with services, and NEMT has always, it's just a really critical service, and I have a lot of strong feelings about it. So I'm excited to be able to participate in this work and help move it along. So I appreciate you welcoming me to join with you all today.
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. And Joan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joan. I use she, her pronouns. I am a policy analyst with the Medicaid transportation team supporting Michelle. I've been with OHA for about 1.5 years in a different program before transitioning into this team back in August. So I'm still fairly new and learning my way around things. And I guess quick little fun fact, I really enjoy running. It's just an opportunity for me to get outside. I'm nowhere near good at it. I'm not fast at all, but it's just a great time to, just enjoy the fresh air when I can.
Great, thank you. And I think that covers the folks from OHA that we have here today. Am I missing anyone? Please speak up if I am. All right. So I guess lastly, just to introduce myself to the group, David Simnett, work as a policy development consultant, health policy, and been doing that for the last 5 years or so. And prior to that, worked in state government in kind of the same realm, really working in healthcare policy, Medicaid, those types of things for 20 plus years. And an interesting thing about me is I come from a family of 5 boys. So I have 4 brothers, no sisters. And there is a 17-year spread between the oldest and youngest. So it's I've got, retired. One, my oldest brother just retired earlier this year, and the younger brother who's 8 years younger than me. And so anyway, quite a spread. So with that, we can go ahead and move to our next agenda item. And again, thank you all for those great introductions. So I wanted to talk about the charter. I sent that out to folks, and then earlier this week, had put together a Google Doc. I know George had expressed some difficulty in accessing that. Maybe others also had some difficulty. I don't know. I didn't hear about a lot of changes that you all were recommending, which is good. I did go in and make some what I would say are non-substantive changes. So those include updating our meeting dates for this year, updating the membership, TAC membership, so that it reflects the group that we have here today. There was a typo I found in our previous version, so I fixed that. But other than that, I didn't make any changes. I haven't been in the last few hours into the Google Doc to see if there were any other suggested edits. So I just wanted to pause here and see if folks had proposed changes or things that they would like to discuss today in terms of additional changes other than those that I just mentioned, the sort of technical updates that you all would want to consider for the charter, for our charter for the next year. So I'm going to pause there and see what folks have, if anything. And it's definitely okay if you don't have anything. That just shows what a good job we did the first year. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, and I just popped out and looked at that Google Doc, and I don't see any updates from folks in there either. So, with that, I think I guess I would look to you all to see if you are okay with go ahead approving the charter as it is, or what would be any suggestions for next steps that you would have. I would say that maybe we just take care of this today and we update with those technical changes and then we call it good. But I'm open to other suggestions. George?
Since I had trouble with Google on this, where do I go from here? You're going to send it to me on PDF and then I can send it back to you, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, George. Were you able to the first one that I sent in PDF and Microsoft Word didn't have those technical updates that I mentioned, but were you able to open that PDF document and look at the charter other than those technical changes?
A little bit.
Okay. So yeah, I'm happy to, what I can do is send the updated PDF and Word version to folks that has the changes that I'm proposing, those technical changes, and get that out to everyone. I'm happy to do that.
So
George, yeah, go ahead, George, please.
When do you want the response back? What's the deadline?
So let's come back to that. It's a great question. And let's come back to that. I want to see sort of where other folks are at, and then that'll help us to know, like, how much time makes sense. So what other people thinking in terms of next steps or changes or a desire to look more closely at it? Does that make sense to you? Have other folks looked at it and you feel comfortable? Just trying to get a sense of that.
I don't have any suggested changes.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. All right.
This is John.
Yeah, John.
I'm okay with the document. And we can always revisit whatever we find at issue at a later time.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John. It's not sort of a one and done thing, and that's always been the case. I wanted to revisit it since we were moving into year 2, but John's absolutely right. If at any point any our sort of mission changes or someone finds something that you didn't really understand or you're understanding differently now, we can definitely make changes at any time. So I think that's a really good point. All right. So I'm going to propose this then. I will update the document. I'll send it out to everyone. Let's say a week. From tomorrow, so that'll give you, sort of weekend, and we say next Friday, so that would be the 29th, I think. If we can have feedback, any additional feedback to me by the 29th. If there are substantive things in those if we get suggested changes and they are substantive, then we'll probably need to take a look at, a way to discuss those or review those, whether that's via email or we bring it back to our January meeting. Short of that, if we have no additional changes or they're just additional technical changes, what I would suggest is that after that, we can just consider the charter approved. I'll update that date to reflect, next Friday as the approval date. And we'll go from there. So we have kind of this two paths that if substantive changes, we'll have some sort of conversation. If no substantive changes, next Friday we'll call it good. Does that sound good to everyone? If you want to give me thumbs up or if there are alternative thoughts, okay. All right, great. So I'll get that out probably tomorrow. Is probably when I'll be able to get those updates updated in the Word version and the PDF version, and get that out to you all. So, all right, good. Sounds like a great plan for the charter, and I think we're actually a little bit ahead of schedule even. So, which is great. So let's go ahead and move to the next area. So I wanted to spend some time talking with you all about sort of what do we look at, what do we look like as a TAC in our work for year 2. And I wanted to start with sort of a summary of the things that as I talked to all of you individually, as I looked at the work that we had done in year 1, as I looked at the recommendations that you had made, the discussions that we had, et cetera. And then in my conversations with OHA staff too, I identified sort of what I see as sort of the themes and sort of top priorities coming from you, from OHA staff, et cetera. And there's a lot of agreement there. So there wasn't like, here's what the TAC thinks and here's what OHA staff think. It was pretty much the same thing. And I think that those are sort of reflected here. So I want to go through these. I would add that I didn't put them in any particular order. So, it's like, just because it's at the top of the list here doesn't mean it's the most important thing at all. Or if it's at the bottom of the list, it's not necessarily the least important thing. These are just the things. They could really be put in any order and it wouldn't impact the importance of any of these items. So for year 2, what sort of is identified as things for us to work on, priorities, et cetera, is this charter update that turned out to be a fairly easy thing, I think, at least so far. So we can probably check that off pretty soon. Really creating a new unified TAC group as we sort of move into the next year, especially joining some new folks to the group. Really important to sort of get on the same page and understand where each other are coming from. So that was another goal. The next things are sort of more around the work, the specific work about developing recommendations and seeing those come into some sort of fruition. And so the next one is really getting some OHA detailed timelines and plans to address the TAC recommendations that you all have made so far. I think we've seen some of these come into practice through some of the rule changes that you all commented on and made recommendations about on the TNC pilot and sort of the way that was designed. I think we've seen some things that have come into play so far. But a number of other things are sort of in progress and really, or haven't really started in earnest. And so really getting some more detailed information so that you all have a good understanding of when those things will be addressed, how they'll be addressed, have some future opportunities to be able to provide input and do some perfecting of whatever those plans may be. So this is really around, this isn't an exhaustive list of those recommendations that you've made, but it kind of covers the main categories, I think. One is really around member informing materials. So this is about, you know, the writer guide, trainings, training opportunities for members, et cetera, and those types of things, so that people have a good understanding of what the benefit is, how to access that benefit, how to, you know, make schedule rides, et cetera. And then language access was another area that there were some recommendations and some plans I think are underway to do some additional work on that. But I think there's still some unanswered questions about it as well. The next one, and I think this reminds me of a point I wanted to make on this, is many of these are sort of interrelated. And so in the sense that you can't really work on one without working on some of the others. And so I think a number of these sort of fall into that category. But the next big area is really around no-shows and managing no-shows and having some accountability and some limited payment opportunities from OHA in terms of, you know, when there's a OHP member no-show and it's sort of falling into this chronic area, that there's some opportunity to be able to actually make a payment for a ride that didn't happen, but all the things leading up to it were there. So okay, so if we go on to the next slide. And then once we get through all of these, then we can come back and provide, have a discussion or provide additional information on any of them that folks want to bring us back to. Next area is really around sort of what OHA is doing and finding on monitoring of NEMT services. So we're going to hear today about CCO quarterly quality reports, but also things like brokerage performance and other things like that. Next is really looking at CCO reprocurement. So coming up for rebid of the CCO contracts here pretty quickly. So known in the parlance maybe as CCO 3.0. Looking at the next one, concerns, complaints, grievances, appeals, and those processes. I heard from a number of you with concerns or questions about this area in particular, and really looking at, you know, how are they designed to work? What are the rules and the policy around each of these areas? And then looking at how they're actually working, which may be great in some times and in some areas, and other times is not really working very well. And then looking at opportunities for improvement around those different processes. Next slide. The next one is really around call centers and their metrics and what those, both in terms of what the expectations are for call centers, so time to answer, dropped calls, those types of things. What are those expectations? And then what are those metrics actually looking like? And then talking about some potential improvements to that, changing of requirements or expectations, whatever that may be. This next one is pretty interconnected to call center stuff, but member difficulties in scheduling rides. Heard a lot about long call center wait times, often no rides available when it's needed, or, you know, it's a long time to be able to get a ride, whether that's a burst schedule or pickup. that especially sort of on the return trip home, there's no ride available or it's not timely, insufficient provider networks, members without permanent addresses, and what that means in terms of their ability to schedule rides, sort of things along those lines. And then the final one here is TNC pilot updates and performance. I think this is still sort of honestly sort of floundering. The TNC pilot's not really up and going yet, even though it's technically live, but I'm not sure that there have been any sort of TNC pilot rides yet. So there's an opportunity probably for the TAC to get some updates about, how that's going, when that's going, and then once it actually is, how the performance is going with that. So let me pause there. See if those are resonating with you all. Hopefully they are, because like I said, that's where I pulled them from. If there's other things that should be on here that aren't, if there are any of these that are sort of unclear, that you have questions about, or that you think there should be some additional detail, to make sure that people are understanding it, and other TAC members especially are understanding it. So let me pause and see what questions or comments you all have.
I have a
George.
concern that we are so often pushing for looking at what's wrong that we really haven't been putting enough emphasis on the ones that are doing it right.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Ruth. And so let me ask a couple of questions about that. So are you thinking just in terms of sort of the overall program and the requirements that are in place that are right and are working well? Or are you thinking about sort of the brokerages or the CCOs that are doing a really good job and maybe have sort of lessons learned and best practices that they could share with others?
I think I'm mostly thinking about the ones that are really doing right, and we need to recognize that they're doing right.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I've been trying to think about ways that we might hear from a variety of folks that are sort of can bring us information about sort of innovative things that they've done or problem solving that they've engaged in to arrive at a good system, a good program that's working really well for most of the members, with the idea that sharing of information could help improve services in other areas and across the state. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. So let's go next to George. I think you had your hand up next, and then Charles. I'm guessing you may have a comment about the conversation that we were just having. But we'll go second to you. So George.
Yeah, I like all that we're doing here, but I also would want to know, could we put, say, like a OHA website as being one of our categories to work on too? Because I have an idea about the website where you can put like different NEMT providers and brokerages. It's on the website, and they'll be color coded, so when a consumer is to go and they're in that county, they can know who's the provider and who's the brokerage.
Okay. Yeah. So if we can capture that, Carla, as a sort of an additional piece, I think in some part, George, that might fall into sort of that informing materials. So, a resource for people to be able to understand those things that you're talking about. So we may have that partly covered, but I think calling that out explicitly about sort of that information on the OHA website so that people can navigate to the right place easily, we can make sure to cover that.
Okay.
All right, Charles.
Uh, yeah, actually, I have a comment on the second one first and the first one second. So there is a page that talks about the brokerage. I use it all, brokerages in the various areas. I use it all the time. So it is a super useful tool, and it would be great to survey some of the educational opportunities. But then to go back to the first one, I did like that comment that I think it would be really great that we do spend some time on best practices, things that are working well in various areas, so we can maybe capture and leverage those in areas that they aren't doing those type of things. So it's really great to talk about things that are working exceptionally well. I know that as we have inter-brokerage meetings and other things similar like that, that we have a lot of really creative and really innovative people, and it would be great to share the positive things that both from the member side, the provider side, and from the provider side, what that looks like. So I would really like to spend some time doing that.
Great, thank you. All right, other comments, additions, questions to the list that I went over? Yeah, George.
I like the idea and how you guys are coming out on the CCO quarterly things. So then we can better understand them and so on and so forth on those.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna we're gonna get started on that today, actually, here in just a little bit. And there was the one pager that I sent out with our meeting materials. So hopefully folks have had a chance to review that, but we'll be able to talk about that and then look at what's next from the tax perspective in terms of those quarterly reports and other monitoring things that OHA has going on. Okay. Any other comments? So what I'm going to go to next, just so you know where we're going, is looking at sort of our schedule over the next year, and sort of have some proposals about the specific meetings and top sort of high level topic areas that might fall under each of those. So that's where we're going to go next, and hopefully you see most of these things are identified in some way or another on that schedule. But anything else before? Okay, all right. Before we move on to that. All right. So Carla, if you want to go to the next slide. So what this is each of our next 4 meetings. So we've got meetings every other month: January, March, May, and July. And then in August, that will be our final meeting. And I didn't identify anything for the August meeting specifically because I think that that's really going to be sort of influenced and impacted by the work that we do leading up to that. And I think that'll be sort of wrap up and stuff for our year 2. So this is what I'm thinking might make sense in terms of meeting agendas and topic areas for each of these 4 meetings. And then the other thing I want you to be thinking about as I go through these is, for this next year, I'm thinking that it would be helpful for for sort of our subgroups. We've had some work teams do some things in the last year, and I'm thinking the way that we might approach that this year is to have 3 of our TAC members or so for each of these 4 meetings, helped with sort of the planning and development of the actual agenda, speakers, topic areas, et cetera, around this, with the idea that every TAC member, we sort of spread this out. So every TAC member, we have 12 TAC members, 4 meetings here, so three per. meeting, every TAC member would be involved in at least one of sort of those planning meetings and development meetings for the agenda and stuff for each of these areas. And maybe up to two, but probably not more than two, because then that puts a lot of burden on one person, and also it sort of starts to be the same person sort of influencing multiple conversations, which I want to make sure that we maintain a balance with the planning part. So be thinking about that as we go through these, and what might be a particular interest to you if you have a preference, and then we can talk about that. So and if you have questions about sort of what I'm thinking, we'll also have a few minutes to go over that. So for the January meeting, I'm thinking that really looking at that complaints, grievance, appeals processes would be helpful. And I think that I've heard from many of you questions or concerns about this. I think OHA is often getting, and the Ombuds office in particular, but often getting sort of questions about where people can go with complaints, how they know when they're resolved, and what they can do if they're not resolved to their in the way that they think that they should be, et cetera. So I think this would be a good one. And I think that it's one that we should be able to take up pretty quickly, which is why I've identified it first, both because of its importance and because of sort of the development requirements, I think, to get us to a good meeting in January. So any thoughts about, actually, let me just go through these quickly. You can see them too. But so for March, we would be looking at under this proposal here, language access, and no-shows, both the accountability and payments piece. For May, we'd be looking at the call centers and metrics around that, et cetera, and those informing materials. So there's the writer guides, online tutorials, live trainings, and the like. And then in July, talking about CCO re-procurement, how that's shaping up, what opportunities there might be to suggest changes for the next contracting cycle with CCOs, changes in the NEMT world, obviously, in particular. And then that might give us enough sort of runway for the TNC pilot to be able to get some updates on what's happening with that. So that's what I'm thinking in terms of sort of strategy and timing for each of those topic areas. So are there thoughts around, does that make sense to you? Does this approach make sense? Do those seem like the right topic areas? Yeah, Tim.
I would just recommend that at least you have somebody like one of the brokerages in each of these meetings who is more familiar with some of the requirements, for like call center metrics and stuff. Sometimes those can get pretty heavy and complicated, and so it's nice to have somebody that's actually experienced or worked with those reports in order to kind of share some of their experiences and recommended improvements.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes. And the goal here would be to sort of have representation from each of our sort of areas on the TAC. So we'd have like, transportation folks involved in all of them, members involved in all of them. So, but your point about the brokerage in particular, Tim, I think on that topic is a good one. Other thoughts or questions on this? Okay. So I saw, John, that has expressed interest in a couple of the areas. That's great. If other folks want to indicate that in the chat, that'd be super helpful. If you want to follow up with me afterwards, I'm hoping to sort of map this out and and get you sort of get our different teams identified to make sure that, like I said, we have representation from all of our TAC members, but that we have it balanced out and we have the right folks to be able at each of these to be able to have those conversations. So so I'll be reaching out to you as well to sort of solidify that. Yeah, Elisa.
Yeah, I just want to have a little clarification as somebody new here. So are each of these subjects like separate work groups? Is that what this, or just just kind of hosting and getting material ready to discuss a upcoming meeting?
Yeah, so more the latter.
Okay.
So you would be part of sort of the planning group to talk about what does an agenda around this look like, and what information would we need to have, who would we need to have present. So like, when we're thinking about hearing sort of best practices in some of these areas, probably makes sense that some CCO folks or some brokerage folks may need to be involved to be able to share those things. And to the extent that we have that on our committee, that's great. But to the extent that we don't, then looking at who might those folks be to be able to provide information. And so it's really around sort of developing the planning and helping me to be able to know who are the right people and resources to draw on. All right, your question, George. The slides will be I can email these out to the group, but they're always once we get the updates on the web page, then these slides will be out in that public web page as well. But I'm happy to get this out to you. The whole slide deck. I'll send those out to everyone, all of our TAC members, so that you have them in advance to help you sort of be thinking about what areas you might be interested in. So, okay. Anything else on this? I do think that one of the questions that we just had made me sort of reminded me of one of the things I wanted to talk about is with these. So in addition to sort of volunteering or identifying yourself that you would be particularly interested in one or more of these topic areas, if there are specific things that you want to make sure or you would like to suggest get covered, or experts that may have some information for us, share those as well. And you don't really need to be part of the planning committee to do that. What I'll do is I'll compile those things, and then I can bring those to the planning committee meeting to be able to talk through that with that group. But certainly, if there's questions that you think we need to ask, or like I said, people that we need to check in with, or data things that we need to get from OHA or others to be able to have these conversations, pointing that out will be super helpful. All right. Anything else on this topic? All right, great. So next, we're going to hear on the CCO quarterly quality reports on NEMT from Andrea and Michelle. So I'm going to turn it over to them. And I don't know, I wasn't sure if you all have, Andrea and Michelle, if you have slides. I think we can go ahead and take, regardless, I think we can take this down for now, this slide deck, and then either put up the slides that they have, or if it's just conversation, then we'll be able to see each other a little better with those slides down.
Oh,
Great.
I just took away all of our pictures. We do have some slides just to help kind of
Excellent.
facilitate the conversation, make sure we don't miss anything that we want to chat with you all about. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take the lead on this conversation. And Michelle and Joan, if you see I miss anything, please feel free to chime in. So yeah, today we really just wanted to have an opportunity to talk about the work that we've been doing around the NEMT quarterly quality assurance report. There's been a lot of work underway with that, so wanted to kind of start the conversation with a little bit of an overview about what is the report, what are we using it for, what's happening with that. Give an update on where we are in identifying NEMT performance and the monitoring that we are doing. And then also talk about the work we're doing moving forward and some of the changes we're working on making. And then at the end of all of that, really eager for any feedback that you all may have. A lot of the changes we're proposing are really specific, but really think you guys will have some insight. And I just want to say thanks, David, for going over your guys' plans for this next year, because I was really able to see that there's definitely some direct correlations that will come out of this report. So I think it'll be this will be a nice foundational conversation. So kind of excited for that. So yeah, alrighty, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the report. As David mentioned, he did send that like one page, well, I guess it was a two-pager, but just a little overview of about what the QA report is. So would just refer you to that for some more detailed information about the different sections of the report. There were links to the actual report template and the guidance as well in there. So please definitely check that out if you haven't had a chance. But again, still wanted to do a little bit of an overview so that we have a common understanding, since it'll be the foundation of the conversation today. So yeah, just a really like high level is the quarterly QA report is a document, it's a template that OHA posts online for the CCOs to use, and they populate that and submit it to OHA on a quarterly basis, and it's full of quite a bit of different data elements. And that data includes information related to the kinds of rides that are provided and the outcomes of those rides. So we're getting counts of, total rides provided, what amount of rides were late, what if, how many no-shows, both on the driver and the client side, information about same day ride requests and scheduled, and so much more. So it's a lot of information that really gives a sense of what's happening in the network. And then there's also information that's reported on related to the actual NEMT network, like number of drivers and vehicles. There's a whole section on call center metrics, and then also information about reimbursements and the kinds of reimbursements issued to members. And really, our goal on OHA's side is to look at this information to really understand what are the services being provided in detail, but also it helps us understand are CCOs meeting their contractual requirements. So looking at that like monitoring and performance side, but also understanding, are there service gaps or area of improvement that OHA can assist CCOs with? Are there systemic issues that we need to address? So it's really just really great information to understand what's happening and then be able to, take action on that. And then also, pertinent to this conversation is, a lot of the data that comes out of this can be useful in informing policy changes and, suggestions that you all may have to the program. So that's really the whole goal of what this information we get is. And I think it's also important to note that OHA's review and analysis of this reporting information is relatively new. It's been a contract requirement for some time, but we really didn't start digging into that until 2022. And last year, we were able to review the 2022 quarterly data and start conversations with the CCOs about what is in there, where we're maybe noticing gaps, or if we have questions, and just trying to get an understanding of really what's happening there. And it allowed us to start conversations about getting on the same page about expectations and making improvements to the report. And then earlier this year, we completed a comprehensive review of the 2023 quarterly data. We looked at each quarter and was really able to look at maybe trends over the years, or just over the year, I guess I should say, and also identify opportunities for improvement, which again has been incredibly helpful. And now we are, for 2024, we are reviewing the reports as they are submitted. There is a delay. So for instance, for Q1, that is due, they're due 90 days after the quarter. So the end of Q1 is the end of March. Those submissions come to us at the end of June. So there is a delay in which we get that information. So we've really only had an opportunity to review quarters 1 and 2 for 2024 because we don't have the Q3 data yet, but we were able to focus on areas of concern where maybe we noticed data quality issues or inconsistencies, or areas where we provided feedback to the CCOs for improvement. So really noticing kind of some trends over time now between 2023 and then these new quarters. And we've really been trying to provide guidance and suggestions and just kind of calling out the things that we're seeing. And then starting in Q3 and for Q4, we're going to start pushing back a little bit more, asking for corrections to the reports, really around those areas that we're noticing like trends where we're not seeing improvements. And the main reason for that is so far as we've done these reviews, we've really seen that the data we're getting is really not consistent with the data that OHA is requesting. So there's an issue with data quality, making it difficult to really identify what is the reality, what's actually going on out there. Are metrics being met or not? It's a little unclear to us. So a really big focus at the moment is getting that data quality where it needs to be so that we can rely on that information to have these conversations. So so that was one part of that. And then another piece around that data quality was around the guidance clarity. So we identified areas where OHA's guidance could be more clear, examples provided. We also identified some difficulties around misunderstanding of language, like I say ride, you say trip, they mean the same thing, or do they? I don't know. So we've had a lot of really valuable conversations of identifying areas where we need to be really clear about what are we asking for and making sure everyone understands what that means so that we're getting consistently the right information. Another example of that is we have a data field to report on driver cancellations, but when we had conversations at the CCO joint NEMT meetings, we learned that folks are not what we have been considering a driver cancellation is really maybe an incomplete ride on the CCO or brokerage side. So that is creating an incorrect expectation. So really trying to get that clarification super clear. And then the other piece that we identified through this process so far is that there are parts of the reporting that might be a duplication where we're getting that information through another report that's submitted by the CCO. So maybe we can remove that from this report and gather it elsewhere, so it's just less information to have to report on. And then there's also, we've identified areas where we don't need to gather that data. There's no use for it for a variety of different reasons. So it's giving us a chance to look at streamlining the reporting and really focusing on what OHA actually needs to gather to address all of these questions that really the questions that are already on your all's agenda for this year. So that's kind of where just some history about what we've been doing and kind of what's guiding our actions moving forward. So again, because of those data quality issues, we're really not able to get a full picture of the performance and what the networks are doing. But we have been able to look at some specific requirements that are outlined in contract and Oregon administrative rule. So for instance, we can now look at the timeliness of reimbursements issued to members. Are we getting those reimbursements issued back to members within the 14 days of the request? So that's one thing that we've been able to look at. And I would say generally it looks like we're meeting that requirement. We're starting to see some trends where maybe some aren't. So that's going to allow us to facilitate conversations as to maybe why that's happening, how that can be improved upon. And then we're also able to look at call center metrics, and just wanted to call out that in contract, there's really only 3 standards that we're looking at, and those are what are here on this slide around the answer rate, at least 80% of calls being answered by a live voice within 45 seconds, abandoned calls, and hold time, average hold time. And what we discovered, which is a little unfortunate, but it's good we identified it so that we can make improvement, is the framing of the way that we are asking for the data in the report is not actually helping us identify if 80% of calls are being answered within 45 seconds. It is nice that we can see, though, we're getting how many calls are being answered within 45 seconds across the board. So it's interesting because a lot of them, we are seeing a lot are being answered within 45 seconds, and some maybe aren't, but maybe they're meeting that metric of 80%, but we don't know because we're not asking the question appropriately in the report. So that's an area that we really need to improve upon. So we're actually gathering the data we need. And then we're not asking about hold time at all in the report. So that's another area where we need to add that in so that we can get a better sense of what's happening and be in compliance with the contract that we have in place, since those are the specific pieces that we're supposed to be monitoring. So unfortunately, this means we can't reliably report on this at this point in time, but our hope is that by making these changes to the report, we'll be able to get that information and have a better sense of what's happening out there. So yeah, after doing all of this and really thinking about what changes needed to be made, where we might need to add clarification based on the conversations we've been having back and forth with the CCOs after reviewing those quarterly reports, we had some discussions at the 2 most recent NEMT CCO joint meetings, which have been, I just want to say, because I know there are folks on this call who participated in those, and it's just been so incredibly helpful. I'm not an expert on call centers or even necessarily NEMT, but I'm, trying to help. So it's just really great getting this understanding and making sure we're all on the same page. So it's been so extremely helpful because it really helped us understand not all brokerages and CCOs are operating with the same technology or tracking things in the same way. So it's something OHA needs to be really mindful of how are we asking for this information, and are we asking for information that can be attained? So I think we have a better understanding about that now, which is great. We also have had some really wonderful conversation around language and terminology and how really being very clear in what these terms mean and what OHA is expecting from that. And I think we've been able to reach some common understanding about, again, what does cancellation mean, or what does a late ride really mean? So that's been so extremely helpful. And then after those 2 meetings, we also sent out a follow-up survey just to make sure that we were able to hear back from everybody specifically. Again, knowing that a lot of these conversations are broad, not everyone's able to kind of, time-wise, even in particular, right, just speak up and share their individual circumstances. So the survey has been very helpful to give us some specific information about different brokerages and CCOs, just to make sure that as we're looking at making changes to this report, that it's going to work for everybody as much as we can. So all of this, I'm like, man, I'm going really fast. Please holler or stop. I feel like I'm just rambling at you. So please, if I'm speaking too fast or need to slow down, please let me know. But all of this work is feeding into this next step and the changes we want to make to this report. So this slide is really high level. We'll go into some more details just so you can see examples of the kinds of changes we're wanting to make, because really I'm hoping, you know, for you to be able to have an opportunity to share your thoughts on it. So yes, the high overview here is really, you know, we want to make sure we're removing those duplications or unnecessary reporting requirements. Like, let's get rid of work we don't need to be doing. But also make sure we're including the things we should be including. So really kind of cleaning that up and streamlining that, really making sure we're getting that guidance out there, very, very clear about what we're asking for. So again, we can improve that data quality and get consistent data that we can actually use. You know, I think a big thing is, you know, it's really hard to determine what performance is when you don't really know, like, what are the statewide trends? What are the averages across the state? So once we're able to kind of get a better handle of that, we can then identify, okay, well, you know, this is really not in line with what we're seeing statewide. Maybe we need to look into, you know, identified issues or things like that. And then we also want to utilize other available reporting and data sources that can provide insight into the services that are being provided. So those are kind of like the big 4 goals, I think, moving forward to improve on this reporting. And then just again, just to share some kind of specifics, you know, the CCOs and brokerages were able to share that, you know, there's really no need for us to request reporting on denials in certain areas, like there's outdated data points where we're not tracking that anymore, like this denied other resources field, it's just not in use anymore, or where we have duplication, specifically around denials, because there is a quarterly grievance and appeal log, and within that there is a section about reporting on denials. So we want to try and leverage that as much as we're able to. Unfortunately, it's not one for one. We've been asking for some really specific information about denials in the report that the grievance and appeal log doesn't necessarily go to, but we can still really use that to get insight about how many denials are there, are they related to lack of coverage, that sort of thing. So really want to clean that up, specifically around the denial piece. And then again, I'm not going to harp on it too much because I already kind of talked about the call center data, but really cleaning up that data so it's super clear what we're asking, or the ask in the template, to make sure we're getting accurate data. And then adding that call center hold time bit into there as well. And some of this will also include formatting improvements to make it really clear what we're asking for, where to put the information, and then also making sure that OHA is receiving the data in a format that we can easily use to pull it all together to look at the information. So some clarity around that as well. And then we're also going to make some updates based on conversations that we've had. So for instance, we had recently added a field to gather information on how many rides were considered ambulatory, but ambulatory is a tough definition to like really pin down really clearly. So it was really helpful to hear that, you know, maybe we're more interested in understanding what is the actual mode of transportation being used. Someone with a sedan transportation is obviously going to have well, I shouldn't say obviously, but is likely to have a different need than someone maybe in a stretcher vehicle, or someone who relies on a wheelchair van to get around. So if we're really trying to understand the different accessibility there, we realized maybe we need to be capturing what are the modes of transportation that are being provided, because that's going to give us a much more precise understanding of the kinds of rides that are being utilized out there in the communities. We're also going to start tracking public transportation specifically, this one's been kind of an interesting one to learn about how that's provided by the CCOs and brokerages. And, we asked a lot of questions about, are you all scheduling those rides? Are you just providing bus tickets, bus passes, that sort of thing? So we had a lot of conversation about that, and we'll probably be just trying to understand like what is the kind of spending around, or how many bus tickets are we issuing. And it certainly will tell us a lot, if we have folks, I think going back to the ambulatory conversation, folks who are pretty mobile on their own, if they're able to use public transit and want to, that is a very great source of transportation. And then, we have other vehicles still available for people who maybe need or aren't able to use public transit. So it's just more information that'll be helpful for us. And then I added that driver cancellation to incomplete ride example of just where we identified language that OHA could tweak on the report, just to make sure it's really clear what we're asking for, that we're really interested in those situations when a member just isn't able to get a ride for some reason, where they don't actually get picked up at all, which could mean a driver can't get there, but that doesn't mean another person doesn't come in and help them. So just really trying to add some nuance to that, and just making that very clear. So those are just like the kinds of examples of things that we've been talking about and wanting to add clarity in the reporting. And then as part of that, we'll be making sure to update the technical specifications, which is the guidance document, to capture all of that stuff, including things like when we're talking about what a late ride means, providing some example to help illuminate that, and make sure that we're accurately reporting what the actual late ride, which is also why it was wonderful to have the conversation with everybody, because I did not know that there is some question around that. So it's great that we can get clarity out there. So this is just, again, examples about just more guidance to make sure everyone's on the same page. And then I made the slide, and at the last minute realized it's completely duplicative of the bullets on like 2 slides ago. But just to reiterate, like all of these changes we're talking about, we're hoping will really feed into improving that data quality, the accuracy, the consistency of it, so that we can really truly assess what's happening in the network. And then also, once we see that really clearly, and then have an ability to utilize other data sources, the idea being that we can really, again, get a fuller picture of what's happening. I think about grievances as an example. We receive complaints for, a variety of different reasons. Are we seeing that reflected in the grievance and appeal log? Are we seeing that reported, or similar situations reported in the QA log or the QA report? And then start to try and identify trends and figure out where there's room for improvement. But really, we just got to get the data where it's at so we can get to this point. And so, in terms of timelines, our goal was really to make these changes effective for the second quarter in 2025. But there is a potential that we'll push this date back, because there's a lot of work and research that we're working on here. We want to be very, very thoughtful about the changes that we make and when, because currently we have 2 different templates posted for usage for this reporting, and it's confusing, right? You're going to go, which one am I supposed to be using? There's been changes. So we really want to not make changes every quarter or anything like that, and be really thoughtful about what those changes are, because we know that it's impactful on the CCOs and the brokerages, because there's work that has to happen on that side to make sure they're able to gather that data and report on it. So we want to make sure we're really covering all of our bases and doing it right. So we might need to push it out, but we don't have any decision made on that yet. But if we do that, then the changes will need to be posted on the first of the year, so that the CCOs and brokerages have time to make changes before the second quarter begins in April. So that's kind of where we're at right now, is really just trying to get as much research and get as much information that we can to make those changes. And then our hope will be to return back to you all probably in that May meeting to provide updates about the changes that we've made, what we're seeing. I don't know how well we're going to be able to provide an update on call center data necessarily, because I know that's the topic of the May meeting, because the second quarter we will not have received the information yet. So that's what I was mentioning a little bit before about there's a lot of delays in when we make the change and then when we receive that updated information. But my hope is that we would be able to, again, give you updated information, and then hearing the conversation that will come out of the call center and then being able to get good data shortly thereafter will hopefully allow us to start making some movements on changes and whatnot. So that's really the hope there, I think. And then that's really it. So again, I know I just like spewed a lot of information at you, but really was just interested in, if you all have specific thoughts in terms of, any potential changes to the reporting, if any of the things we talked about today are concerning to you, if there's anything that makes you go, oh, I don't know, would love to hear about that. Because again, we want to be really mindful and thoughtful about these changes because they are impactful and there's work associated with it. Or if there's thoughts you have on information that you feel would be important for us to gather that may not be in the report, that would be something that we might want to include so that we can have a better understanding of a certain data point that you all have an interest in. So yeah, I'll just quit babbling at you and open the floor to see if anyone has questions or thoughts. And yeah. Oh, and I didn't see if there were. Oh, I see Michelle put some stuff in chat. Nice. Great. That's awesome. Joel.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thanks for being pretty transparent with the group. A lot of the information that you shared didn't exactly reflect well on what's happened in the past with the OHA and the responsibility that you guys have to review the data and the reporting that is being submitted and required. I can definitely tell you that, being on the ground and actually serving folks, heard many times that people feel like their voice isn't heard when they raise complaints and try to push feedback through. And I could say that probably from the provider standpoint as well, just the way that things operate. Sometimes it feels like the chain that leads to the top where the decisions are made is a little bit too long. And so I appreciate you just being transparent and owning the fact that, like, look, there's a lot of stuff that we haven't even been looking at or pouring over. Having accurate data is so crucial to being able to make informed and effective decisions towards solutions. So I just appreciate your transparency. Although as a human being and somebody who participates and has been in this industry for about a decade, it's frustrating to hear some of that transparency because this affects people's lives at a serious level, and it's super important. So, but again, I do appreciate your transparency, and I would hope and definitely ask that you try to check in with this TAC as often as you can to even get some additional feedback for some of those metrics and maybe things to look at, because there's a lot of expertise in this room, people that have real life experience, being supported by this program, but also participating in it. So I would urge that as well. But that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joel. That feedback's extremely helpful. Yeah, agreed on all of that. Oh, I think Kathy's got her hand up.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm interested to know, are the contracts between the CCO and the brokerages? So in Oregon, of course, and I don't know who all is familiar with this, but in Oregon, the brokerages contract with the CCO, not with the healthcare authority, as is done in other states. So are those contracts generic, or is there a template that OHA puts out for those contracts, or is the CCO just making it up as they go along?
That's a great question. I believe the CCOs are creating their own individual contracts as their responsibility, and there may be different services negotiated with brokerages, et cetera. So it's, the relationships may vary between the different CCOs and the different brokerages. But what I will say is that OHA's contract with the CCOs has an entire section on NEMT services, which addresses a wide variety of topics to, policies and procedures, call center, all of that stuff, writer guides, et cetera. And so the CCOs should be really using that as the guide, because that is their responsibility, as their contracted responsibility. And when they delegate that task out to a subcontractor, the CCOs are responsible for ensuring that all of those requirements are met. So that's part of why it gets a little interesting, because OHA does have fee for service contracts with the brokerages, and then the CCOs also do. So it does get, I think, a little wacky sometimes with maybe the differences there.
Yeah, so to follow up with that, so it was my understanding that under CMS rules, it is the healthcare authority that is responsible for brokerage performance, and measuring brokerage performance, which I think we're talking to with all of this data. But so I'm wondering, at what level do the CCOs have the responsibility to also monitor that performance? Like it seems like it's supposed to be done from both ends, CCO and OHA, but but because of my personal experience with one brokerage, I can see a huge difference between the performance of one particular brokerage and others, and areas where I am shocked that they haven't been called out on certain things that they're doing. So I'm just wondering who is responsible for calling that out?
So I will speak from my understanding, and I also on the quality assurance team am part of our subcontractor and delegation sub team, and our understanding has always been, so I want to go back and look at that CFR now, but our relationship with the CCOs is that it is their responsibility to ensure that. So what I can say is part of the work that we're doing on the OHA side, when we're getting that report and those reports and that information, I would expect that the CCOs are also looking at that data and looking for issues and addressing those issues, and also looking at grievance data to ensure that there aren't concerns that need to be addressed. On the QA team, we do also review CCO requirements on monitoring their subcontractors. So it's kind of a twofold thing here. So, I think part of the issue on the NEMT side is we're still like, is this information correct? Because we don't know if it's right or not, and we don't want to say bad you if it's incorrect. So we got to get that figured out. But on the other side is on the subcontractor side, is we're ensuring or trying to get to the point where we can ensure that the CCOs are managing their subcontractors appropriately, and that includes monitoring. And if that means issues are identified and needing to do improvement plans, et cetera. And I can also say that we have required CCOs to submit corrective action plans to OHA when there are issues. And there are several that we've seen across the board from CCOs to their NEMT brokerages. So there is work happening between CCOs and those brokerages. Now, how consistent across the board, I couldn't speak to that necessarily, but there are mechanisms in place where that supposed to be happening. oh gosh, who had their hand up next? Tim.
Thank you. And to speak to Kathy's comment about the contracts, we get a contract from one of our CCOs, but then we created a contract for one of our others. And then OHA provides us a contract for the NEMT services. So it can look very different, but we do have contracts with everybody. As far as the reports, is there any discussion on aligning the fee-for-service metrics with the CCO metrics? We're actually reporting for CCOs, two CCOs, but the metrics that we're reporting for OHA are slightly different. I'm not sure why, but it makes it difficult for us because we have to create different types of queries and reports to pull the data differently. And so just throwing it out there that it would be really helpful for us if all of the data was the same so that we didn't have to have complex queries.
Yeah, thank you. And I can speak to that a bit. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's a really good point and awareness to bring to this as well, Tim. We are working with the fee-for-service quality assurance folks. So like Andrea under CCO, we're working with counterparts under fee-for-service and really looking at how to align that so it is less of an administrative burden, because we know there's a lot of brokerages that operate for NEMT on both sides, CCO and fee-for-service. These deliverables under the CCO side of NEMT have been longer standing and have been established for a while. Not that we've historically done a good job monitoring them and using them when we receive them, but that's a lot of what we've been talking about that we've been working on to get to and get those accurate and consistent with data, and then seeing how to mirror that on the fee-for-service side. There's some data that we've been able to get out of the stats within the monthly brokerage reports that we receive on the fee-for-service side, so we can leverage some of the data that way. We were looking at ways if we could avoid creating a whole different report template and mechanism for that. So I would be interested to hear your thoughts and other folks' thoughts as we look to achieve that alignment, but that is something we're aware of and working on as well for how to do that. So thank you.
All right, I think we have Ruth's hand next.
I've been concerned about what happens if you have an uptake in the amount of people requesting rides, and how does your data work in helping you to make sure that you don't wind up having a deluge and then people not being able to get the rides?
I almost wonder if this might be a question for folks who work with this report because, oh, I see Charles' hand, because I think that's part of the ongoing monitoring of, what do we have available? What are the needs? If someone wants to unmute and share their thoughts on that, would welcome it.
Yeah, we actually constantly monitor that. We're actually up 25% call volume year over year. So we monitor that constantly. We make sure we're always moving staff around. We're making sure that we have the right bodies in the right seats at the right time, so we get those calls answered in the shortest time possible. We consistently monitor our overall network capacity, also by mode. We were in the Tri-County area, we actually have a bit of a unique situation because it's not one partner solution. So the one partner that works with the provider specifically, we're in literally weekly communication on what we're seeing, what times, what we've got going on. So it's a consistent iterative process, and we literally monitor it every day, every week. So now, obviously, we have a larger provider network, and it's more challenging to do ebbs and flows in more rural areas and also the wider spaces that you have. But that's something that we very, very, very closely, regularly monitor.
And I would echo on OHA's side. I wouldn't say we're quite there yet, but again, the whole goal of all these changes would to also be able to identify those shifts and changes, because maybe that means there needs to be changes on OHA's side. There's lots of different levers that can be utilized in terms of trying to get more transportation providers and all sorts of things like that. So it also helps us get a sense of what's happening out there and try and stay on top of those things as well.
So this is David, and we have a couple more minutes,
time,
but I just wanted to give you sort of the high sign here that we need to wrap up this conversation.
Do we have time for? I see Kathy's hands up now. Or
yeah, please.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Kathy,
great, thanks. I was just interested in that piece on public transportation that you mentioned, and I think what you were referring to was fixed route or deviated fixed route services, purchasing bus passes. And it's just something we have struggled with in this region, is to get our brokerages to purchase passes. We have an annual pass for $40 for the year. We cannot get the brokerage interested in purchasing passes for those clients that could use that service, and they would be able to use it for other trip purposes as well. So just it just seems like some of the things that are possible do not get passed down to the brokerage, as you will purchase passes if it's, if it meets these criteria, or public transportation passes. Yeah.
I mean, Michelle might have some more to chime in on this, but I think this is a really great point, because this is probably a great topic for further discussion around, like there are limitations, like some of the things that came up were, really the brokerages are only supposed to authorize rides for specifically covered services. So when you start getting these, overarching authorizations, you don't know if it's used for medical or not. But I think that's probably something worth talking about. I don't know from like a policy standpoint, because there are some really strict rules around that, but I suppose there could be arguments to be made about cost over time. $40 for a year is probably cheaper than a monthly, and maybe that's OHA needs to co-sign on that or something, you know what I mean? Because there's probably be naturally some nervousness to go outside of the rules. So that's probably a complicated topic, but one worth talking about.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, I mean, that's in the new CMS guidance. So I'm just hoping that OHA is going to, that the CCO 3.0, that some of these quality control conversations are going to take the guidance seriously and pull that guidance into some of these conversations, because for public transportation providers who are sometimes the only vendor in that area, this is that guidance could be really beneficial, and to continue to provide NEMT services in those rural areas.
Thanks for bringing that up.
I can just say it's definitely on our radar and something we want to work through and see what we can do within policy work and with that CMS guidance as a directive. It really falls under, that category of things that where there's inefficiencies, where it could be a lot more effective, and how to move forward on that, along with bus passes, ways that we can make more efficient with member reimbursements. We hear a lot from healthcare folks that the paperwork and the cumbersome ways that it's designed right now. So there's a lot of things kind of in that category, but we really want to engage together and look at how to make that better. And follow that guidance that CMS has put out and how to put that into policy.
Great. All right, so we have just a couple of minutes left in the meeting, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to sort of talk about next steps and sort of action items that we have on our plate. I would add that I do think this will be an ongoing conversation, certainly, and it'll be very helpful to have sort of reports back in terms of, you know, the perfecting of the data that you're talking about. And then also sort of as you start to move in on these particular elements into sort of that quality assurance, quality improvement, sort of corrective action plans, if it comes to that, what that's looking like and how that's working out. And I do think that some of these things that we're talking about today, in terms of sort of information or misinformation maybe that brokerages have or call centers have, I think we can get into in some of our conversations, and in particular sort of that complaints area, to sort of look at closing the loop on this. So making sure that, you know, if people have misinformation, that they're getting correct information, not necessarily from, you know, a member or somebody else who they might not be sure whether that's reliable or not, but from, you know, OHA or their CCO or wherever, that they need to get it to be able to hear it and understand it. So I do think there'll be some good opportunities in some of those future conversations for us. So with that, I wanted to say thank you certainly to Andrea in particular and Michelle for this information. I think these slides, I think Andrea will also be available for folks. Is that right? So we'll get those to Carla. Those will get updated onto the site, so you'll be able to have access to those slides and continue to provide feedback and recommendations on that. So I wanted to hit on a couple of things. So our next meeting is on January 16th. I'm going to be soon reaching out to folks who have either raised their hand so far or might in the future for that topic area around complaints, grievances, appeals, that sort of thing, so that we can get the ball rolling on planning for that January 16th meeting. I have a couple of action items in addition to that, to send out the charter with the technical updates in PDF and Word version to you all, so that you have this next week to take a look at that. You all have an action item if you have additional changes to make, recommendations, questions, that you send those to me by next Friday. I'll have these details in the email that I send out, so you don't have to write that down. But just wanted to get that on your radar. And then I'm going to send out the PowerPoint from today's conversation, so that you have those slides about our topic areas and the meeting focus areas, where I'm asking for members to help with the planning, so that you can take a look at that. And then I would ask that you all get me back that information if you have a particular interest. If any of them look fine to you, that's great as well. I'll be sort of looking at, you know, based on sort of your background and the conversations that we've had, hoping to sort of match people up with topics that will hopefully be of interest to you all. But if you have particular interest, let me note that as well. Is there anything else that I've missed? Any clarifications that you all need? Any sort of final thoughts before we wrap up today's session? Yeah, George.
Yeah, as I was putting in the chat there, I think brokerages and OHA should look back on the rules that were passed in 2018 on contracts and such related to NEMTs. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of pushback in that 2018 era when those rules were passed on a lot of stuff. When it was burdened down to the CCOs when we first started out.
Okay. And George, are you talking in particular about the OARs, the Oregon Administrative Rules? Is that the rules that you're referring to?
Yes, OHA has got them. OHA has got the 2018 rules that were passed through Congress.
All right. I think that's it for us. Thank you all so much. And look for those emails from me, and I'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Happy,
Have a good
happy,
evening.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks, Al.
happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.